Welcome to Vacuum Wars, and to our review of the MOVA Mobius 60 robot vacuum. It's the latest flagship robot vacuum from MOVA, who's rapidly becoming a top-tier player in the robot vacuum industry. The Mobius 60 has a ton of new technology, as well as the multi-mop switching dock, which is fast becoming a popular category of its own. We bought one for ourselves and put it through all kinds of tests over several weeks, and in this video, we'll go over the pros and cons, and in the end, reveal how high it ended up ranking on the Vacuum Wars Top 20 list. So, links in the description, and let's get started. While this is primarily a review of the Mobius 60, I'll also be comparing it against what I think is its main competitor, the Dreame Matrix 10 Ultra, throughout this review. The two companies are somewhat related, and these products are very clearly modeled after one another, with the main exception being that the one we're reviewing here, the Mobius 60, is cheaper than the Dreame Matrix 10 Ultra. So it'll be interesting to see if it outperforms the Matrix 10 as we progress. Starting off with the pros, and let's jump right into the robot itself. It's a well-constructed robot using a pretty advanced brush system, which they call the Turbo Wave Duo Brush. This is a dual brush system that's open at one end to channel hair to that side, in combination with a single side brush which automatically extends when it senses it's near corners for much better corner coverage. These two brushes worked well together in our various pickup tests on hard floors and carpet, where it was as good as you would want it to be in terms of sweeping up debris off the surfaces. But the Mobius 60 really shined when it came to the various performance metrics, where it was not only better than average, but better than its more expensive competitor in many cases. In terms of raw power, we measured its suction at 1.3 kilopascals, which was slightly higher than the Dreame Matrix 10, though its airflow was exactly the same. With the two deep cleaning tests that we do, the Mobius 60 again did better than the Matrix 10. For example, with the carpet deep clean test, it had an amazing 88%, one of the highest on record. And in the 2.5-inch flattened pet hair pickup test, it scored a 94%, well over the average of 81%. One possible reason for its slightly better deep cleaning is a new feature that we've not seen before. When the Mobius 60 detects carpet, a pressure retention baffle lowers automatically to form a semi-sealed space, which increases the available suction to that area. I'm not sure, but this feature could have also played a role in the crevice pickup test, where the Mobius 60 was again significantly better than its main competitor. The anti-tangle brushes performed well in our 7-inch hair tangle test, getting a perfect score. So in terms of its sweeping and vacuuming ability and raw power, the Mobius 60 is top tier. Another big pro on the robot itself is its new threshold climbing system. They're calling it the Stepmaster System 2.0, and it has robotic retractable legs that lift up the chassis to cross thresholds, door tracks, U-shaped furniture legs, and obstacles. We tested this in various ways, and it actually did better than advertised. They say that it can cross a single-tier threshold up to 1.9 inches, about 50 millimeters. But in our tests, it was able to cross just over that at 51 millimeters, though it did fail the 57 millimeter threshold test. In any case, this is the highest that we've seen yet, tying with the previous winner, also from MOVA, the Z60. Another big pro was its obstacle avoidance system. In the front of the robot, it has several sensors, including a camera and a structured light 3D scanner, as well as an LED light, so that it can boost visibility in dark situations. They say they trained the robot on 240 obstacles, which is a pretty high number, though that is the same number that Dreame advertises for their Matrix 10. However, in the various obstacle avoidance tasks that we did, again, the cheaper Mobius 60 scored a 22 out of a possible 24, which is significantly above the average of 17. But probably the biggest story with the Mobius 60 is its multifunctional dock, which includes the so-called mop swap system, which automatically changes out 3 interchangeable mop pads for different mopping needs. The Dreame Matrix 10 Ultra was the first robot we've seen to have this feature, so that's one of the main reasons to compare these two robots. Before getting to the mop swap system, the base itself has all the major functionality you would want from a top-tier dock. For example, not only does the robot empty its internal dustbin into a disposable bag in the base, but the dock also washes the robot's mop pads with industry-leading 202-degree Fahrenheit hot water, and refills the robot's water tank with water and one of 2 possible solutions in its dual cleaning solution tanks. The Mop Swap Hub automatically changes out 3 potential mop pads made from specialized materials that can adapt to each room's cleaning needs, whether it's grease in the kitchen, delicate wood in the living room, etc. They have the Thermo Hold Mop, which absorbs heat during the hot water washing, the Plush Mop, made from ultra-soft soft materials ideal for wooden and delicate floors, and the Hyper Clean Mop, which is more multi-purpose with composite microfibers, better for all-around cleaning. You can set in the app which floors you want to be cleaned with which mops, and the robot does all the work for you. It will also intelligently recognize and make these decisions for you by default if you choose not to. In general, we found this to work really well in terms of switching the mops without problems, at least that we noticed in the testing we did in 2 different locations. There was one unexpected drawback to this technology, which was noticed during this review, but we'll get to that during the cons. For now, let's move on to its actual mopping ability. The Mobius 60 uses 2 spinning mop pads, one of which can automatically extend to the side when it's near edges in order to have better edge coverage. The mop pads themselves lift up to avoid getting carpets wet, or they can be left at the base if you would prefer the vacuum carpets without them. In addition to advertising large RPM and downward force numbers, it has a 5-degree angle option for uneven surfaces. So, in general, it's one of the most feature-rich mopping systems we have seen yet. We tested its mopping ability in several ways and on several settings, and found that its stain removal was slightly below average, and this was because it used a lot less water than average. Even when we set its water to high, it was below the average amount. I found that its ThermoHold mop pads, which hold warm water, did about 15% better than the others at dried-on stain removal. When you combine its stain score with its water scores, it actually ended up getting an above-average overall mopping score, but just barely. And in general, tough stain removal is one area where the Dreame Matrix 10 did better. A good rule of thumb with the Mobius 60 would be to boost its water level a little higher than normal in the app for best results. Moving on to the cons. Most of the negative things that I noticed with the Mobius 60 had to do with its battery life and a little bit to do with its navigation. The Mobius 60 uses an internal LiDAR system. This is where the LiDAR turret, which it uses for mapping and navigating your home, retracts into the robot when it senses low furniture. It's able to retract to a height of around 3.5 inches, which is about half an inch lower than average, and it does allow it to get under some furniture it might not otherwise be able to. However, these systems are slightly less good than their non-retractable LiDAR counterparts, and in the various navigation tests that we did, it was a little slower than average. It seemed to be a smart robot. It never got stuck in the testing that we did, but it was below average with navigation speed. But the real issue was battery life. It was significantly below average, and even below the Dreame Matrix 10, which was in itself below average. Its official battery life numbers are also lower than the Matrix 10, but combined with its slower navigation, it really did hurt its square foot per charge numbers. But this is where I think its new dock explains some things. I started to notice that when I had a lot of mop pads selected, the battery life was much worse. What I realized was that it was taking a significant amount of battery life to wash the mop pads. This is because the robot has to spin the mop pads during the wash cycle, which uses the battery, and it needs to wash the pads several times during the run depending on your settings. If you're using multiple mop pads per run, then you're doing that process a lot. On one occasion, I noticed that it started its run at 91% battery because it pre-washed 2 different sets of mop pads, but it didn't do that every time, so I don't know what the deal was there. It was able to finish our floor plans in both studios without running out of battery. And of course, it has recharge and resume, so if it does run out of battery life, it will simply return to its base to recharge and then resume where it left off. But it is notable that battery life is its main weakness. The other con I'll mention is related to its reviews online. We've started to see a trend on Amazon recently where it's getting harder to trust their reviews. And that is all I will say about that. So, other than slightly slower navigation and battery life, especially if you use the switching mop system a lot, the MOVA Mobius 60 is a pretty impressive machine. When we added up all the scores, I was impressed to see that it's currently ranking number 3 on the Vacuum Wars Top 20 list, well above the Dreame Matrix 10 Ultra, which is ranking number 10. This is mostly because of the Mobius 60's better vacuuming performance and deep clean results. If you're a person who really loves mopping and wants to have granular control over the various mopping capabilities with multiple mop pads, the dual solution tank, and tons of mop settings, you can't do any better than the MOVA Mobius 60 right now. Links in the description, and be sure to subscribe to Vacuum Wars before you leave. Thanks for watching.
All of the links in the description are updated regularly to reflect our current favorite vacuums in multiple categories. You'll also find links to the Vacuum Wars website in the description, where we have more detailed lists of our favorite products, like our new Top 20 Robot Vacuums list, which is updated weekly.